Is Thursday, of course, and you know what that means. I have two shows. Last week was Bitcoin and politics. This time, it's going to be Bitcoin is freedom. And before I get started my show, I'm going to do a little bit of something that's probably out of the ordinary for me, but hopefully you enjoy it. So with that, I want to give some attention to our sponsors. And I'll start by saying this. Every card you connect with Roundly X, every swipe you take with Roundly X, every single day, every purchase you make, you'll be stacking sats. Hey, if you use code Bitcoin is freedom, you'll get $15. And to get started, you just have to go over to roundlyx.com and they're going to hook you up. It's Bitcoin and freedom time, folks.
Here we go.
Let's get started.
Hey, listen, I never said I was a professional singer. So listen, my name is Paul, and I sometimes go by P. Diddy. So, you know, hey, P. Diddy, Paul, get it every step. Never mind. Hey, folks, listen, it is Thursday. I've got a great show lined up for you. And I'll start by saying this, and I've said this before in my briefs, but everyone, if you've been paying any attention, you'll know that Bitcoin's been sort of boring, right? But there's a catch to that. Even though Bitcoin is boring, doesn't mean nothing's going on. It just means, it's sort of boring, right? All right, let's take a look at the price, since that's the place to always start when you're talking about Bitcoin, right? Everyone likes to talk about price. It's easy to look at, right? So here's the thing. If you're paying any attention, January 1st of this year, Bitcoin was trading at $16,625.08. That was on January 1st. And I have a link to Yahoo Finance. You can go prove it for yourself. And last month, the beginning of May, it was at $28,091.57. Well, it pulled back. It pulled back only about $1,000, and right now we're trading about $27,000, right? But here's the kicker, guys. We're up 10 grand this year, $10,000. Bitcoin is up right now. Everyone should be incredibly happy. The Bitcoin dominance is at 46.1, Ethereum's at 19.8. But we won't talk about Ethereum because this is all about Bitcoin being freedom, folks. All right, let's take a look at some of our metrics and indicators. Now, these are from articles that I've curated all month long, only in the month of May. But the on-chain analyst or the on-chain analytics indicated that we're supposed to correct down to 24,000. Now, this is mainly driven by short-term holders, and that's a short-term holder indicator. That's where it says that. And the reason is that most of the short-term folks are underwater, and they'll probably sell. If they do, that very well could push us down to 24. Now, I want you to remember that number 24. You're going to see it happen a lot throughout the news. And I don't know why everyone's locked in on 24, but they are. The next thing you need to know as far as the metrics and indicators is an all-time high in transactions. That's right. Bitcoin hit an all-time high in transactions. This was driven primarily by the most covered news of the month, that is, of course, and that's about the ordinals, and I'll get into that later. We got Valkyrie, if you're familiar with them. They talked about a head and shoulders pattern, and they also indicated that Bitcoin could pull back as a result of this head and shoulders indicator, a pattern that was playing out. And guess what? That pattern really hasn't materialized the way that they thought it would. You've got transaction fees. They actually surpassed block revenue for the first time since 2017. The holds above, Bitcoin itself was holding above the 200-week moving average, and that's an indicator that a lot of people look at, and they're like, if we fall below the 200-week 200-week moving average, that could be a very bad thing for Bitcoin. But so far, we're still hanging above that. 6 weeks descending wedge, that's also another bearish indicator. Peter Brandt was talking about a pennant being a short-term bearish indicator, and the Ikumuchu cloud suggests a drop to 24K. So it seems like there's a lot of bearish sentiment going on when you look at the metrics and the indicators. Meanwhile, Bitcoin's been boring. It's been sitting in one spot. Now, as we look at the opinions, and listen, we're not short of opinions, but the opinions actually say a little bit different. Now, let me start off by saying this one by Mike McGlone. He is saying that if things got really bad in the stock market and with the rates and everything, and we saw a massive pullback, that Bitcoin had the potential to pull back all the way to 7K. That doesn't make me happy. I'm sure it doesn't make you happy. And to be honest, is it possible? Of course. Is it probable? Probably not, right? Jamie Dimon and Nicholas Merton, those two buddies are in camp together. I'm sure Nick probably wouldn't associate himself with Jamie Dimon, but guess what? Both of those guys think that Bitcoin's going to plunge to 12K. So you got a 7K call, 12K call. What is going on, people? Katie Stockton, she thinks we're going to drop to 25.5. Well, that's the end of the bearish opinions right there. Those four folks, that's it. Finito. Now, we are seeing a lot of bullish opinions coming from a lot of people. Financial experts think that it's going to peak in 2023 at 35,459. We're not far from that. So if that's the case, maybe maybe the first four are correct. We'll see a massive pullback, and then we'll see this thing skyrocket, and they could close the year at 35 if the financial experts are right. I don't think they're right. Matrixport, they see a rally to 36K. They did not give a time frame for that, but it's possible. Now, I didn't happen to put it here, but my good friend Brian Swan, who I'm wearing his shirt, Don't Fight the Fibs, Fibbo Swanee, he talked about it going to 48 by June. Now, guess what? It's June, and we're not at 48. Will we see Bitcoin rally from 27 to 48 by the end of this month? If Fibbo Swanee's indicators were correct, you could see that. So, folks, maybe you should be stacking some sats. All right. Jeff Kendrick from Standard Chartered. They see 50K by the end of the summer. Well, that's a lot more bullish than the financial experts talking about 35K peaking in 2023. So that would be beautiful. And Standard Chartered would be almost in line with what Fibbo Swanee was saying, right? We spiked ourselves up to 48 by the end of June. We could see it go a little bit higher maybe, and a pullback or a pullback and then rally higher to 50. Who knows? Plan B, now we're getting into the ludicrous territory. Plan B, which we know the stock to flow sort of indicator has been, whatever. It's not been that accurate. It did not play out the way Plan B thought it was going to play out. Everyone was calling for 100K, including Plan B, back a couple years ago. It did happen. But anyway, he sees six figures coming according to the stock to flow indicator. Yeah, tongue in, take that with, whatever it's worth for you. Bali Srinivasan, Bali G. Srinivasan, how you want to pronounce his name. Don't mean to butcher your name, Balaji. He says he's not backtracking. He says Bitcoin's still going to 1 million. However, he closed his bet because it wasn't going to happen in the next 90 days, right? That was ludicrous in the beginning to even think that someone thinks Bitcoin was going to go to 1 million in 90 days. Well, Arthur Hayes is right there with Balaji. He says what? He says 1 million Bitcoin. He thinks Bitcoin's going to make it to 1 million. Those two gentlemen have a good reason why they think that. If things get as bad as we think they're going to get with the stock market, with the Fed, we very well could see a six-figure Bitcoin. A seven-figure Bitcoin. Forget the six figures of Plan B, seven-figure Bitcoin. All right. JP Morgan says that institutions are preferring gold over Bitcoin, and we'll see if that plays out and if that continues. But something tells me that the institutions are going to wise up and they're going to start looking at Bitcoin in a different light, and they might start getting off zero. Hopefully, most of them are off zero. Nigut, I don't know how to pronounce her name right, but she believes there's going to be an explosion in layer 2 protocols. She's a developer, a Bitcoin core developer, and she's seeing an explosion of layer 2 protocols, or she's at least predicting that coming to pass. You got Glassnodes talking about Mt. Gox and U.S. government Bitcoins are on the move. That was pretty interesting to see them say that. And then Gabrielle McAuliffe, Ireland's central bank's governor, thinks that Bitcoin is a Ponzi. We've been through that before, folks. That's like 2008 calling 2008, 2009 calling for its narrative back. It's not a Ponzi. Sorry. If anybody's listening to Ireland's bank governor, you shouldn't. Because Anthony Scaramucci comes out and says just the opposite. He says, what? Bitcoin is 50% undervalued. If Bitcoin is 50% undervalued and it was to double from where it is now, we're looking at that $50,000, right? A little more than $50,000. Be pretty exciting if that happens. And then last but not least, a report came out that says Bitcoin is safer than the US dollar. Would you believe that? Safer than the US dollar. Okay, let's look at the hodling that's been going on. These two statements are incredibly powerful. And again, if you're someone who have not gotten off zero with Bitcoin, if this doesn't make you get off zero, I'm not sure what's going to make that happen. Maybe my last slide will. But this is what it says. Nearly $125 billion worth of Bitcoin are now considered ancient, or the fact that they've been untouched for at least 7 years, according to top blockchain analytics firm Glassnode. And when you think about it, that tells you what? That's some diamond hands, right? To hold this asset for 7 years, not to touch it, that's diamond hands. And that's what I'm hoping most of you will have, because anyone who's looking at Bitcoin, and if they really want Bitcoin to create freedom for them, you can't think in 3 months, 6 months. You can't think in a year. You have to think longer term. Folks, this is not a get-rich-quick scheme. Bitcoin, that is. It's not a get-rich-quick scheme. This is going to be there for generations upon generations upon generations. And the number will continue to go up. Again, I'll reference that in my last slide. New data from digital asset analytics firm Sentiment reveals that Bitcoin whales, these are the big fellas, the people that have hundreds of Bitcoin, have accumulated nearly $2.3 billion worth of crypto, of the crypto king, Bitcoin, during its most recent price dip. Bitcoin had dipped down. The whales come rushing in. They bought $2.3 billion worth, and that's probably what stabilized in the price where it is now. Now, again, these numbers are not massive. Guys, $2.3 billion is nothing. Bitcoin's market cap is $500 billion. That's not $500 billion. I should say that right. $500 billion. So 2.3 is the drop in the bucket. It's not a lot of money when you look at the overall market cap of Bitcoin. But it is significant to see that we are in the accumulation zone for Bitcoin. If you want to have true freedom, you need to have some Bitcoin. As they say, some is better than none and more is better than less. Now, it appears that that's getting across to a lot of people, because we just now have 1 million addresses that's holding one Bitcoin. Now, here's something that you need to understand. This doesn't mean 1 million people are holding one Bitcoin, because I could have multiple wallets holding one Bitcoin in multiple. That would be sweet, right? And that means that I'm one person, but I got multiple wallets. So just because there's 1 million addresses with one Bitcoin doesn't mean 1 million people are holding one Bitcoin. That is not true. And if anybody ever says that, please tell them no, that's not true. Now, in addition to that, the exchange reserves has dropped to a 5-year low. I think people are starting to understand not your keys, not your coins. And it didn't help that FTX blew up, and it didn't help that all these banks are having problems. People are starting to understand you can't trust third parties. Trust yourself. Bitcoin is made for you to actually hold it yourself, and you can do that with a lot of different ways. And I will again give a shout out to our good friends at Unchained Capital. They are a phenomenal way for you to actually hold your own keys. They will help you, and they'll help you facilitate that process. All right. So the most covered news for the month of May were about 3 stories. Bitcoin ordinals by far took the lion's share of the news press, starting from the beginning of the month all the way to the end. That's all the news was talking about, Bitcoin ordinals. They grew from 2.5 million to 10 million plus ordinals on the Bitcoin blockchain. In addition, we got news that they've now created a bridge where you can move your Ethereum NFTs over to Bitcoin. Folks, this is just getting insane. Now, again, we've got 2 camps that are screaming about Bitcoin. You have the maxis who are losing their crap because they don't want NFTs, shitcoins, or whatever you want to call it on the Bitcoin blockchain. But I tell you who the people are that are really happy, it's the miners. Those guys are getting massive transaction fees as a result of all of the orders that's on the Bitcoin blockchain. The BRC20 tokens, that's all. People are raving about that. And again, we've got two camps that are screaming at each other about if this should be done. If you did not go to Bitcoin Miami 2023, they had a session. Eric Wall and Yudi were there dressed as wizards. And I'm telling you, it was just a crap show. Listen, forget about it. It's an evolutionary process. Bitcoin blockchain will be allowed to do a lot of crazy stuff. And that's just the way that it is. Paul Tudor Jones said he's sticking with Bitcoin. Now, he came out with some comments that most people probably thought he was trying to dog Bitcoin out. But he says, listen, this is the longest I've been on a horse ever. So he's holding on to Bitcoin. He says he's going to stick with Bitcoin. And that's pretty big news. Again, listen, this is Paul Tudor Jones saying he's sticking with Bitcoin. What should that mean for you to do? I don't know. You got to make that decision, not me. I can't give you financial advice. And then last but not least, at the Bitcoin 2023 conference this year, we saw two presidential candidates make statements about they were going to accept Bitcoin for donations, and they both were incredibly bullish on Bitcoin. Ron DeSantis wasn't there. He made his announcement after the conference, but he came out saying something like he needed to protect Bitcoin. And if you watched my show last week, you would have known that I was going crazy because Bitcoin doesn't need any politicians' protections. Doesn't need it. Bitcoin is pure freedom. Freedom from the state, freedom from government, freedom from people, freedom from everything. Bitcoin is decentralized, censorship-resistant technology, and it's the best that we've ever seen. Well, as we turn toward our mining news, there was a lot going on with mining. And I think you guys need to pay attention to this because mining is one of the key aspects that run this entire infrastructure. And without the miners, we'd be in trouble, right? We would not be keeping it secure. That's their job, to keep the Bitcoin blockchain, the Bitcoin ledger secure. And the way they do that is through mining. So the cost to mine actually rose from $5,000 to $17,000. Mining grows in Bhutan using hydro. And again, I just want to give a head tilt to anyone talking ESG nonsense. Forget about it. Over 50% of Bitcoin mining is done with renewable energy. As a matter of fact, Bitcoin mining might become the first net zero process on the planet, right? This is just crazy that people listen to ESG stuff, go crazy about ESG stuff, thinking that Bitcoin consumes so much energy. Bitcoin helps the grid. Bitcoin helps the energy sector in such big ways. This is why Shell was one of the sponsors of the Bitcoin mining conference, because they get it, or they at least trying to get it. Mawson Mining in Ohio, 24 megawatt. They're going to be standing up in Q3 of 2023. So we got a couple more months and then they should be powering up. You got Stronghold Digital. They added 400 petahashes, or they are adding 400 petahashes in Canada mid last month and mid this month. Cipher Mining, those guys bought 11,000 rigs and they've reached 600 exahashes. Right behind them is Hive Blockchain. They're going to be targeting 6 exahashes, and they're raising $100 million in funding by selling their equity shares. Marathon Digital, they're going to Abu Dhabi. You got US Bitcoin Core. They're going to host 150,000 miners. Get that? They're going to host 150,000 miners. That's a lot of miners, folks. Bit Digital, they're expanding to Iceland for tax purposes. MicroBT, they've unveiled the most powerful machine. Hash rates at an all-time high. In Texas, of course, their pro-Bitcoin bill passed and their anti-Bitcoin bill failed. Can't get any better than what's in Texas. All right, here's a few other news points that I want you guys to know about that happened in May. Again, like I said, it's been somewhat boring, but it doesn't mean things aren't happening. Taproot upgrade to help deal with the whole ordinals issue, that's happening. El Salvador, the school there, they crowdfunded a school with 1 Bitcoin in donations. You got Seth Lennon. He's saying that he's a Bitcoiner, right? You got paying taxes with Bitcoin in Liechtenstein. First ever Reddit thread on Bitcoin 14 years ago. That happened 14 years ago. You really should check that out. That would be good for people to take a look at. Then we got May 22nd, which was Pizza Day. And then we've got the Bitcoin Tower that's being built in Dubai. All of this is absolutely amazing. And if you're not tuned in, then you're not going to know about it. This is the reason that I curate news information every day. Why? I want you all to read what I read, watch what I watch, and listen to what I listen to. If you do that, you don't have to listen to me. Really, you don't. Because you're going to be exposed to some of the best content that's on the web that deals with digital assets. And if you follow me on LinkedIn, you'll know that I am going Bitcoin only on LinkedIn. Only Bitcoin. Why? Because the new people that I'm talking to there that are not in crypto, they don't need all this crypto crap. They just don't. They need to know about Bitcoin, and I want to make sure I get that to them. To some of you old hats, I can share all this other junk with you guys because you guys know what's shitcoin, what's not, and you guys can make decisions. The new folks, I want them exposed just to Bitcoin. That said, in closing, I want to say this. This was a tweet that was put out by Binance. And if you don't get this again, guys, you just don't get it. But 8 billion people on the planet, 62.5 millionaires on the planet. Every millionaire can't have a Bitcoin. And only 21 million Bitcoin. Guys, you do the math, right? Do the math. Hypothetically, let's just say the 62.5 millionaires woke up tomorrow and was like, I got to have a Bitcoin. The price of Bitcoin would go through the roof. That $1 million, that 7 figures that Arthur Hayes is talking about, that Balihas Srinivasan is talking about, it would be reached literally overnight if all 62.5 millionaires made that decision. And if 8 billion people decided that they needed to have Bitcoin, forget about it, right? I've heard some ludicrous numbers like $100 million per Bitcoin. That means that every Bitcoin would be worth $1. That would be fun. That's the hyper Bitcoinization, right? And on this slide, I also have that the halving is coming. And this was a tweet that was done by, let me see whose name that pops up on this, Seth Michael Steele. And he's talking about the halving. And if you guys aren't familiar, the halving happens next April. And that's where the reward will get cut in half from 6.25 to 3.75 or 3.625 or something of that nature, right? I'm fuzzy on my math. The reward's going to get cut in half. When the reward gets cut in half, the price must double, right? Why? Because miners are spending money to mine Bitcoin at a certain price point. And if you reduce the reward by half, the only way for them to stay in business is that the price must double. Now, when Bitcoin halving happens, those who are not well funded, they will shut down. And when they shut down, that will drop the difficulty rate, which makes it easier for those who are still around to mine Bitcoin and get a reward. But still again, the price still must double. Now, at the time of halving next year, let's hypothetically say Bitcoin's trading back at all-time highs. That's around $69,000, $70,000. If Bitcoin doubles in the next 13 months after halving, this is what Dan Moorhead said from Pantera Capital, you're going to see Bitcoin reach about $140,000 at the top, and then we should get ourselves another significant pullback. That pullback might come back down to where it was when it reach the last all-time high. Maybe it pulls down a little bit below that. So you can see Bitcoin go to 140, come back to around 50, maybe 60, and then back off to the races. We start this process all over again for the next 4-year cycle. And if you're not familiar with Bob Lucas, you probably should watch the 4-year journey because he talks about this as well. So again, definitely want you guys tuning into this slideshow that I have. If you need it, it's going to be on this video. You can get it. And as I'm talking about this video, I am part of Bitcoin Live. We are a network of shows that provide a lot of information on various aspects across the crypto landscape. My 2 shows, Bitcoin is Freedom and Bitcoin Politics, is covering those 2 aspects to help you understand that this is the hardest money you'll ever see and why you should have Bitcoin as at least part of your portfolio. I'm not asking you to put your life savings in. I'm saying part of your portfolio. And then I talk about the political angle because there's a lot going on with politics right now in Bitcoin. Beside my show, we've got Gingerly, we've got 3D Changes Perspectives, we've got Jack Switch. We've got so many shows in the Bitcoin family. You need to please ring the bell, like and subscribe, because if you do that, it's going to get us more visibility. And that means more people can become aware of what's going on with Bitcoin. And I'll say this as I come to a close. This right here, don't fight the fibs. Don't fight the fibs. Guys, if you're a trader or you want to learn to trade, you need to check out Brian Swan in Texas Capital. Those guys are doing a phenomenal job. And if you do that, you're going to be in good shape. Thanks, editor, for putting up my website. If you want to get in contact with me and actually engage with me throughout the day, go check out the Crypto Curator. It has all my links on there, and you can get to me. With that, I'm going to say goodbye. You guys have a great weekend. And hey, I'll be back next week with Bitcoin and politics. What crazy could happen between now and next week in politics and Bitcoin? I don't know, but I'll be ready to tell you about it. You guys have a great day.